I'm Adrienne Irizarry, your resident reproductive rebel, and this week we are breaking down one of the biggest lies we've been sold, the hustle myth. I'm joined by Anna Hall of Embody Space, who brings her wisdom on cycle-aligned planning, a practice that helps you work with your body's rhythms instead of being burnt out by working against them. If you've ever felt drained by hustle culture or guilty for needing rest, this episode is for you. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel Podcast. I am honored to once again be joined by Anna Hall. Welcome to the show, Anna.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
So if you guys did not catch our April episode, I'm going to have Anna reintroduce herself, but she is absolutely the definition of a reproductive rebel. And I am so grateful to be joined by her again and to partner with her on a professional level. If you can share with everybody all of your coolness, Anna, and why we're doing this.
Sure. Yeah. Reproductive Rebel is just the perfect fit for what I'm doing. It's so descriptive. So my background is in education by training, and at heart, I am a teacher, but my focus shifted towards menstrual health and menstrual wellness in about 2021, 2022, in that era when I found out that I was diagnosed with PMDD. Had no idea what that was before. And so I was working as a public school teacher at that point. Pandemic hit. I was staying home with my young children. I had a baby at that point. And then at the same time, I was living in Atlanta, and Roe v. Wade was overturned. And it was just like this convergence of problems, the problem around PMDD and trying to figure out my cycle for the first time in my life as a 31-year-old human. And then, living in a very restrictive state and having a daughter and having all these emotions at the same time. I think I had like 3 period trackers downloaded on my phone at that point because I was using them to really understand my cycle. Each one had different supports for, the different phases of my cycle, but nothing quite gave me what I wanted. And privacy became ever more important because Roe was overturned. At the same time, my partner has been in the startup world. We lived in Silicon Valley for a long time. If you've ever seen the HBO show Silicon Valley, that was basically our life. I was pregnant and living with co-founders kind of thing. And so I had this startup experience where I've seen an idea go from zero to public, which has just been so cool. So all these things in my life combined, and that was the start of Embody, which is an app that's a privacy forward, a menstrual wellness app. So I like to tell people we hold both the science and the sacred of your period and beyond. And if you look at the app, it's free to download. What's free now remain free. We also have a premium version that has enough content, which will soon include content from Adrienne, which we're really excited about. But if you look at the app, it's, phase-based. It's very immersive in that kind of your cycle, and it looks at your entire cycle beyond just bleeding and whatnot. And it is the most privacy forward app available for menstruators right now.
I love this. That's such a beautiful summary. Thank you for reorienting our audience to who you are and what you do. I just absolutely fell in love with the concept of Embody. I met Anna back at the beginning of 2025, and she shared this incredible concept with me. And I was like, oh, this is the app that everybody is looking for, because there was so much conversation at the overturn of Roe v. Wade around, well, I've got to pull my stuff off the internet. I can't track on an electronic tracking app because my information could be subpoenaed. And like, there was a huge panic. And I can't tell you the number of clients that came to me and were like, what do I do now? Like, I know that I will not be accountable if I'm on paper and pencil, like, and I still have some clients that chose to go that route. But you know, it just was like this very tumultuous time, not only for reproductive health, but like your medical information sovereignty. And so when I met Anna and learned about her project, I was like, you are a fellow reproductive rebel, and I need to have you in my circle forever. I have been talking about this app long before I was invited to be a contributor. I'm just so honored that Embody has selected me to be a contributor.
We're thrilled to have you and your content available soon. It'll likely be later this fall, for sure. And we'll be introducing Adrienne and all her wonderful work on our social media channels.
Well, and like to be part of a project that is really leading the way in being able to be a sovereign being over your own personal information, and that's so plugged into, no pun intended, to this whole idea of the fact that you are a cyclical being and you move in a rhythm. And there are going to be some people listening to this that go, well, I take hormonal birth control. Can I still be a cyclical being? And the answer is yes. You totally can be. And we'll talk about that as we go through this episode. But I think that it's really important for people to start becoming acquainted with the fact that you're more than just a period. Yes, that is one of the more active times during your month in terms of how it affects the flow of your life. But there are far more aspects to it than that. And I think it's really important to understand that and to see how that changes. And one of the things I love about Embody is how that visually shows up. It's literally color coded, and you get to visually see how you're moving through the rhythm of your month, which, if being a cyclical being and thinking about your body and your month in a cyclical way is a new concept for you, it's really easy to visualize with the way this platform is designed. So for me, on so many levels, like Embody really is a leader in healthy menstrual living, because not only are they providing cycle-directed content, but they're also protecting your information and teaching you how this works. This is something that I had thought about for years. I was like, man, it would be incredible if there was an app that existed like this. And then I met Anna and I went, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's the app I've always wanted to. I mean, it really,
right?
The color coding of the faces was key for me. That was the thing. And just, as a special education teacher, simple is best. And to be kind of like immersed in the phase that you're in, which is tied to like the seasonal language we use for the number of phases of the cycle as well.
Absolutely. Well, and I love that at a quick glance, because they have this gorgeous widget for Apple phones. I use the widget on my phone and it's on my home screen. So I can turn my phone around. My husband is starting to get real familiar with what the colors are, which is so helpful. But it's nice because even as a busy person, I mean, and I'm more plugged into this kind of rhythm and way of life than the average person. Obviously, this is the world I work in all the time, but I'm still a busy person. So being able to really quickly at a glance see the color of the box on my phone, I'm like, oh, this is why I feel this way. It helps me with compassion for myself, but it also helps me plan my work for the day.
Oh my goodness, yes. I was just like, before we got on, I was looking at my widget because I know I've been ovulating and I've had a ton of energy lately. Like I think as a human with PMDD, I feel that these is a bit like bigger sometimes than other people, just from my experience talking with others. And I was like, I'm feeling a little less confident, a little less social today. I can't remember what day I'm on. And yeah, of course, I hit that luteal marker, my cycle, and I'm like, oh yeah, that tracks.
Absolutely. I woke up this morning and I was like, oof, I'm a couple days before my bleed. And usually I don't do recordings, but I feel good today. I have words today because that's the thing. Like each of these spaces gives us different gifts.
Right. Yeah, it's not prescriptive. It doesn't mean you're going to exactly feel this way on this day. It's just like a gentle outline of how you might be feeling and what you might be meeting at different points in your cycle.
Well, and it's helpful too as like a diagnostic tool, because if you're not feeling that clarity and that increase in energy that you were just describing around ovulation, that tells a story about what's going on inside your body. And those kinds of stories help practitioners like me to sit down with people and go, hey, how are you feeling at ovulation? Do you feel your best during that window? Because some women don't. Some women feel more tired for 3 or 4 days. Some women feel crampy. Some women even feel all of what they would describe as PMS. And I was convinced my period was coming and then it didn't. And then it was 2 weeks and then it came. I hear that a lot in my practice.
Yes.
And that speaks to a chi deficiency from my perspective. It's knowing I'm going to call it the template, like what the template should look like on average in terms of the rise and fall of your energy, the rise and fall of how articulate you are, how clear your mind is, your emotional state, all of those kinds of things. I'm not saying that like a one size fits all, but I am saying that it's amazing how much you can tell about the interior climate of the body based on those symptoms.
Totally. And it's like a really good tool for reflection as well. And sometimes it's not what's going on inside, it's what's going on externally too. Like, am I under an extreme amount of stress at work right now? Or have I been traveling? I had a 33-day cycle last cycle, and I'm pretty sure it's because I ovulated late because I had that cold. And stuff like that. Like there's just a lot of indicators once you are really in tune with your cycle and understand the norm. It's really easy to say, oh, okay, I see what's going on with me. And when we talk about the norm, there is this, aggregate norm of how people typically feel throughout the cycle. But in Embody, we want to be very clear to say there isn't like, you're not trying to have the perfect cycle. There's no such thing as a perfect cycle. It's not something necessarily to strive for. It's about your norm and learning first and foremost what your norm is and how it may vary from the aggregate norm. I think it's really powerful information as well.
Yes, absolutely. So as we look at these norms, I typically will tell people your average is a 28 to 30 day cycle because our bodies like to sync up with the moon, and the lunar cycle is 29 and a half days. So on average, you'll have a 28 to 30 day cycle. Now, Chinese medicine makes that line of demarcation 26 to 30 days. Okay, because it depends on when you ovulate. So they believe that day 12 is as early as you should be ovulating in order to have a fully developed healthy egg for potential conception. So if you think about the fact that you're going to have like roughly a 14-day luteal phase and a day 12 ovulation, that's how you would get 26 days, because your luteal phase should be 13 to 17 days. If it is shorter than that, there can be potential challenges with conception if that is a goal of yours. Positive pregnancy outcomes, I find, generally are 13 to 15 day luteal phases. It's pretty fixed, although Chinese medicine does have some tools that can be used to influence that length. So if it's too short, lifestyle changes, herbal support, and something like either acupuncture or needleless acupuncture, like vibrational acupuncture, are ways that you can work on the overall length of your luteal phase. But in general, your luteal phase is pretty fixed and your follicular phase is the one that shifts. And like you said, stress can definitely influence the way it shows up. And when we say stress, it doesn't necessarily have to be negative stress or, a move. Maybe you're moving to your dream house. Like, these are all things that you want in your life. However, it changes your biorhythm. And that amount of stress can influence the way that your cycle shows up. So I did an episode a little while back about January being the worst periods of the entire year. And because inevitably, every single appointment that I have with clients for the entire month of January, they're going, oh my gosh, my cycle is terrible. I haven't had symptoms in the longest time. What the heck happened? And it really has to do with the fact that no matter what somebody's religious affiliation, that is like the peak of the high holiday season in pretty much every culture. And, women tend to be the magic makers, right? So we're the ones staying up late to do the presents or to make the latkes or that, right? So because of that, by the time we hit January, our systems are like, whoa, baby, that was a lot.
Yeah,
exactly. Because it happens also at a time of year where our body is asking to pull inward and be in more of an internal winter. Yeah. So I tend to plan my work in general around not only the seasons inside of myself, but the seasons in the world around me. Yeah, does this feel aligned to you as well?
Oh, absolutely. And I do the same. And I think there are so many things that I'm really passionate about this topic. Cyclical work and both listening to your internal clock and seeing what's also going on externally and planning for it. That has been the biggest relief to my PMDD, besides some medication, which I'm a strong advocate for if it's needed, but is planning, knowing what your luteal phase typically looks like and being able to plan work according to your needs or plan support according to your needs. It's a huge game changer. And I think not just for yourself, but for your relationships too. I think, the same year that I was diagnosed with PMDD, my husband was diagnosed with adult ADHD. And we looked at each other and we're like, oh, yeah. Oh, okay. And now that I go back and forth that my background in special education diagnosis is a double-edged sword, of course. But in our situation, it was incredibly helpful because then with that knowledge, we were able to kind of plan our life cadence around our very different needs. And I think that's true, especially because we're both entrepreneurs and run our own companies. For example, when you talk about seasons beyond our internal season, fundraising is a big part of having a startup or running a tech company. And so he and I have to take turns because if we're both fundraising, which has happened for a couple of weeks last year, if we're both fundraising at the same time, our world falls apart. We have children and, a life outside of work. And it's been really helpful to say, okay, this is a season of leading all the way in and fundraising for me and my company, which means, okay, I might have to take it back to the situation and vice versa. Also, and Adrian, I imagine you can relate to this as well. Having your own company also comes with burnout. especially if you have a smaller team. And so managing your internal clock, where you are in your cycle, which has a huge effect on your work and your life, both positively and in terms of the supports you need. But then looking at, work as a cyclical creature anyways, especially as a small business owner, right? You have the seasons of, I've got to lean in, I've got to be, externally loud. I need to work on PR. I need to be marketing heavily right now. And then there are these times that are more, I like to say, introverted moments of a company where you're really, heads down, building, focus, planning, intentional. And there's this cyclical nature to running your own business alongside it, your internal cyclical nature, which is really an interesting puzzle to figure out, especially when you live your life up close to other people who have their own stuff going.
Yes, to all of that. And I'm going to throw into all of that also, as a small business owner and an entrepreneur myself, that there's also seasons in your life where, like, I am currently in the season of an infant where he dictates as she nods, right? For any of you who are listening to this, because she mentioned she has had small children, and any of you who have small children, like, they call the shots for a while. And so, your best laid plans, you're like, wow, I can't have this meeting right now because my child decided that he's going to have a grade A meltdown. And I'm so blessed. I have a pretty chill infant, but in general, like, his needs are calling the shots, and, being able to juggle childcare is calling the shots for me a bit more now. I mean, I have 3 teenagers that are, in various stages of being almost out of the house. And now I have this completely dependent little person who, I was, you did avocado, that's the harvest. And he's having a grand old time with his breakfast, and he was taking his time. And I'm like, I have things I have to do, right? So, like, we all feel that pressure at different times, whether that is self-imposed as a solopreneur or a small business entrepreneur, or whether that's essentially imposed by an employer. Like, we live in a container that is so capitalist focused that we are expected to constantly live in spring and summer energy, no matter the cost.
Yeah, totally. It's really challenging to be a cyclical human with cyclical work in a capitalist economy. It really is. It's a challenge. And I think about it every day. And I think that there is a way to marry the two. And sometimes it means people are looking at you like, what are you doing? This isn't what you should be doing right now. But then you have this resolve about, no, I know that if I pull back and I save my energy, I have a plan for popping out when I'm ready and when the product is ready. Like, there is this like kind of internal strategy that can sometimes feel at odds with the market. But I have seen that it can work to your benefit if you really listen to your internal needs and kind of direct your own specific work. And sometimes with Embody, we've gone through seasons where sometimes I'm like, okay, we're in hibernation mode these 2 months, and there are these reasons why. And then being really intentional about your energy when managing a small company has been, for us, beneficial. It's why, a lot of startups burn fast and hard and they burn out, or they go like this, and it's been really rewarding to see that listening to myself and the cyclical nature of our own company has allowed us to continue to be pretty steady in the long run. It's really satisfying to see that, because we've existed for about 3 years now. And I can confidently say that it's been steady because of our decision to be cyclical, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And I just wanted to celebrate what you said, that you have 3 years of data that proves in a capitalist culture that living your life and your business in a cyclical way actually does work. Because like I was sitting down with a business professional the other day and they were like, oh, your business is 7 years old? And I was like, yeah, my business is 7 years old. And it's like one of those things where I survived COVID. I survived, you know what I mean? Like the burnout at the beginning and all of that. And a lot of it is because I have chosen to treat my business as well as my body this way.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. And this is why there's data, coming out that founders that are women over 40 tend to have a higher percentage of return on investment than any other group. Yeah, little known fact. Hello, investors, listen to this. It's real. And I think it is because that's wisdom that comes with being a mature cyclical human, that you can't be 100% spring and summer all the time. It's just not doable. And in the long term, it's not sustainable. And I wish that investors would listen more to that wisdom and look more at the numbers on those returns. I wish I had the exact number for you in the article. Maybe I'll send that to you so you can link it in to the podcast. But, I really think that kind of sense of wisdom, that energy comes and goes, and you can use that to your advantage is really a key in succeeding and lasting in a capitalist society.
Oh, I completely agree. Because like, even just looking at not only the economy changing around me, because I've definitely seen a big shift in that in the time that I've been in practice, but in just the seasons in my own life. Like when I started all of this, I was a little more in that spring and summer energy phase of my life because I was in my early 30s and I had more of that. I could burn the candle at both ends kind of energy. And then I passed 35 and was extended that beautiful invitation that we all get at 35 to be like, I need to be more intentional about how I'm spending my chi and my energy and my, how am I going to create a more meaningful work-life balance? And now I am postpartum and in my 40s. And again, it's like a different change in energy. And one of my favorite quotes, and I have that shit plastered everywhere, is the Lao Tzu quote that nothing ever rushes in nature and everything gets done.
Yes.
And it's so true. Like trees flower and fruit, gardens flower and fruit, but they have a season and they have a peak in that season. And then they have to rest. Otherwise, they can't continue doing what they're born to do.
Yeah.
And that's the world we live in. Like we need to have those resting times. So when we're looking at our menstrual cycle, menstruation is our inner winter, and Embody so beautifully puts that in a gorgeous winter blue. It is our inner winter, and it's a time to reflect. It's a time to pull inward. It's a time to, your bed calls you a little earlier at night and you should listen to it, regardless of whether it's the peak of the summer or the dead of winter. You're going to find that the dead of winter, that pull is going to be more polarized, right? You're going to feel it in a deeper way. But I look at my business has cycles through the year too. Like I have a winter during the winter time, but my peak tends to happen in the fall. For some reason, that's where all of the leads come in and the energy picks up and it's really vibrant and my schedule is usually busting. And I'll have another peak like that more in the springtime, early summer, but summertime is kind of a lull for me because people go on vacation, and wintertime is kind of a lull for me because, we've just come through the holidays and people aren't making any extra spends. And, I just have learned to see that this is the ebb and flow energy of my business. It doesn't line up perfectly with the seasons, but I read this really cool book not all that long ago. It's called Regenerative Business by Sam Garcia. It's brilliant. And it's the first time that I have actually seen a business person, besides you and I, who really truly honors the connection between cycles in business and cycles in nature. We are nature. We have to be connected to nature in order to live and not just survive, but thrive.
Right.
And you can be successful in business and honor these cycles, these internal and external cycles in the world around you. And I love that you said that, 3 years of data, you live and work by those cycles and still see continual upward momentum.
Yeah, it's the long game, baby, right? It's like, yeah. It's just the sooner you acknowledge it and begin to work with it. And we know this like with your period too, right? Like the sooner you are aware and begin to work with it and plan around it, the better, right? Have you ever heard of this? This all makes me think of the cycle wisdom map. It's a very specific protocol, and some cycle schools, I think maybe the Red School uses it. I haven't gotten all of that training on my own, but have secondhand through a friend named Claire Seidler. And when we're talking about all these different cycles, it makes me think of the cycle wisdom map, because what it does, so like the smallest form of your cycle is day and night, right? Day, night, you wouldn't do something at 2 a.m., like go work out, or, like you listen to your circadian rhythm, right? This is something both men and women can understand.
And now a word from our Reproductive Rebel sponsor, Embody Space. Your cycle holds wisdom, and the Embody Space cycle tracking app helps you unlock it. Track your cycle in the only fully encrypted app designed to protect your most sacred data. Get daily guidance tailored to every phase, from bleeding to blooming, with rituals, herbs, lifestyle tips, dietary support, and more. All tailored for your body's natural rhythms, because your body's story is yours alone. Embody Space, your private portal to cycle wisdom. Download now and reclaim your rhythm. And now, back to the show.
And then the next layer, as people with a uterus and ovaries, is, the monthly cycles, right? That we talk about are follicular, luteal, ovulation, and menstrual phase, not menstrual. And then the one outside of that is the actual seasons of the year, right? Those have their own cycle and rhythm. But then the one I think we often forget about is the even bigger one, which is, our life cycle. From menarche to with the cycle wisdom app, so post-menopause, right? Mm-hmm. And how that cycle affects everything as well, and where you are in that. And I think it's a really cool visualization of all these different cycles moving together, and they can be very harmonious. I don't know. It's a helpful mind map and visual. There's been a lot of talk about perimenopause lately, and something I'm really interested in our body. I'm 38, so I'm not there yet, but I'm thinking a lot about it. And you know what? So are a lot of other people, because the generation that grew up with period trackers, they are approaching perimenopause and menopause, but those came around in 2013. So it's just natural that we're kind of having this conversation. And a lot of women are like, well, I don't know. I think I might be getting close to it. And what does that look like? And how does it change my cycle? And the only real way to know is if you're tracking and, typically your cycle becomes shorter or less regular. Anyways, so what we're doing at Embody is we're working with a naturopathic doctor named Dr. Amanda Tracy, who really focuses on perimenopause and natural support for people in perimenopause. I'm really excited about adding her content to the app soon too. And it's really looking at the ways in which your body changes and the way in which your cycle changes according to this new stage of life. And I just really think that it's an area that has less support than we need right now. And the people who are experiencing perimenopause often have children who are experiencing menarche at the same time. So you have these households of two major hormonal events taking place. And
I'm living it. Yes.
Yes. And so I think it's this really cool convergence and like this overlapping of these different people's cycles too. I don't know. I think it's really like we just need more information and more support for people in this stage of life. And I'm really excited that we're going to be able to contribute to that support with Embody soon.
I love that because yes, that is like one of the number one questions that I'm getting right now. And I have a program that walks people through like what happens 35 through the end of the bleed so that they have an awareness around what to expect, what happens, why they should care, the fact that starting to live in a more cyclical way actually helps their perimenopausal experience to not be as symptom-ridden and severe when they know how to care for themselves as this takes place, because there are energetic shifts that start to take place before the physiological ones do, or at least that's how Eastern medicine understands it, and that's how I teach it. So the course covers like 35 or a couple years before that, so like 33 through, I would say like 55 to 60, which sounds like a huge window, and it is. Because if you burn the candle at both ends and you don't really take great care of yourself, you might start seeing some of these 35 changes around 33, 34. But if you are mindful and you've already put some of these things in place and you've become more intentional about how you take care of yourself, like for me, I didn't really see those typical 35 changes where your energy and the pace of your life starts to change and your mindset around certain things begins to shift. I didn't see those things until I was closer to 38. So that part is individual, right? There are certain benchmarks that are pretty common. And like the people who walk through their perimenopausal journey and say, yeah, no, like I didn't really have a lot of hot flashes. I didn't really have a lot of night sweats. I didn't really have a lot of, fill in the blank of the typical anxiety, depression, digestive issues, mood swing roller coasters, all that kind of stuff that so many people, I'm going to say they normalize, but it's really because our culture hasn't learned how to take care of this phase of people's lives. And when I first started doing this work, this is the area that my mom, I remember, she's okay if I share this, but she like called me. My mom doesn't cry much, particularly in public. And she called me and she was in tears. And she goes, Adrienne, she goes, if you don't do anything else, she says, please create resources around perimenopause and menopause for people. She goes, because I look everywhere. She said, and my mom was a librarian of 18 years. She's not a dunce when it comes to finding information. And she was like, I just literally cannot find anything on what is going on in my life. And unfortunately, for a whole bunch of reasons I won't bore you with, my mom's experience lasted on the longer end of things in that 12 to 15 year, and she really thought she was losing her mind. At one point. So I have created resources around this, a 35 through the end of your bleed, what can you expect? Energetic transition type information, physical transition type information, just because there are a lot of shifts as the veil of estrogen drops. For anybody who didn't catch my interview with Jane Hardwick Collings, please check that one out at the beginning of season 4. We talk about what happens in menopause and why you start experiencing some of those energetic shifts. But like, it's a season of your life. And honestly, one of the most powerful ones of your entire life. Step into like the third of your big golden opportunities to reset your health during that time frame. And yet it's hard because, like you said, you have teenagers who are going through their pubescent puberty onboarding of their hormones. The veil of estrogen is dropping and you simply have less patience for bullshit. And so like this really nasty like moment where, if there isn't understanding, information, and compassion on both sides for the fact that there's a huge neurological rewiring that's happening on both ends of this, different in your postpartum, there's a huge neurological rewiring that happens as a result of all of the hormone flood in your body when you are pregnant, and then essentially the crash that happens afterwards. And prolactin governs your life and all of these things. Like menarche, postpartum, and menopause are those 3 golden opportunities to hit a reset button on your entire health picture. They are powerful moments in your life. And when you're in your, 40s, for example, a lot of women are finding themselves either brand new parents because they waited to have kids until they were later on in their life, or for whatever reason, infertility, fill in the blank, it took them longer to get pregnant. So they are parenting young children. Maybe they also have teens and little people in the home. They also may be finding themselves in the sandwich generation where they've got aging parents that they're taking care of at the same time. And, then throw in just life and jobs and a partridge in a pear tree on top of it. Like, it's an intense amount of stress in a period of time where people are incredibly sensitive to stress.
Absolutely. The stress is so up and up. But like you said, understanding and compassion go a long way, and it allows us to get to the work and get to the fun. That's so important.
Absolutely.
And you and I live in this kind of, so I explain Embody sometimes as the space between your OBGYN and TikTok, because if you talk to a lot of people, they're learning about perimenopause for the first time on social media. And I know that they're craving deeper and more, and they're not finding that at their doctor's office. It's the space in between, like your practice, Adrienne, and Embody wants to live there too, connecting practitioners and people with real experience and understanding with, everyday users who need this support beyond TikTok and Instagram, really.
Well, and how reliable is the information and the source that you're getting it from, right? So like, I've had people come in who have been like, oh, well, I learned this on TikTok. And I'm just like, well, some of that's true, or you've just got the people who are doing the, oh, my symptoms are horrible. I can't function. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it's all the negative things about this phase of life rather than the celebration of the transformation and how powerful this phase can really truly be.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how you talked about it as the veil of estrogen falling away and the tolerance for bullshit. I mean, that's like a universal experience we keep hearing from people who have gone through this. And there is, come on, that sounds great.
Well, that's part of what makes it so powerful, right? Is the fact that we collectively, as female-bodied humans, have been culturally indoctrinated into the keep the peace, everything has to be calm and, seen and not heard, because that's also the generation that is stepping into this very fiercely powerful phase of their life. And we just get to a point where we're like, no, my voice matters. And the resentment that builds when we don't talk about these things is part of why people have really explosive symptoms. And, women go from their childbearing years where the focal point was to pour chi, their life, vital force energy, into the creation of life. Homemaker, parent, like the creating of home and hearth, right? Whether that involves children or not. And then in this phase of your life, you are now, as your energetic transition and your physical transition takes place, you are now being invited to pour your vital energy into your life. So this is where women go back to school for careers that maybe they got pregnant while they were in college and they want to finish their degree, or maybe they absolutely hate the career they stumbled into. They did what they had to do to help provide for the family, or they stayed at home and they didn't even get to use their degree because they chose to stay home and raise their children. And now they're like, oh, the world is my oyster. There's all kinds of things that I want to do or can do, or places I want to go, or whatever, right? And so like this can be one of the most transformative and magical experiences of your entire life. And there's so much bad press around it simply because we don't honor working in a cyclical way, living in a cyclical way. And so it's kind of like trying to operate your cell phone battery with 5% battery. Like we've literally burnt out some of our vital energy working against, like I often describe it to my clients as, you see the river, it's flowing in one direction, right? So if you were to swim upstream against the natural flow of the water, you're going to get somewhere, but you're going to be far more tired and you're not going to get as far than if you swim with the water, right? So learning how to plan your work with the phases of your menstrual cycle, with the cycles in your year, the cycles in your life, like that's incredible power.
It really is. And you see, even women who choose not to become mothers or cannot become mothers, you kind of see the same type of pattern. And I see a lot of women where they, in their like early 30s, lean heavily into work. And then there's this kind of leaning back out and realizing there's more going on, and this kind of like power and wisdom that comes with that recognition. And yeah, it really is, I think, a powerful realization, especially like as somebody, I feel lucky that I'm not there yet, but I can see it coming. And just like, I'm just starting my luteal phase too. I see it coming. That allows me to plan for it and to like fully experience it instead of just kind of treading water.
Yes.
You realize and understand what's going on as you're in it.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
But I hope that, what you offer and what Embody is offering is kind of more of a supportive roadmap than we've had before. So that we're not just thrown to the wolves when we get to, say, 40, 42, 45. We know what's going to happen and we can consider it and plan for it and not be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like I have a course called Cycle Productivity Secrets that I created to help people like know what gifts they have in each phase, because like
let's talk about that.
Your menstrual phase, like there are beautiful gifts that you have energetically. Like you're an incredible writer. You're great at like evaluating things. I mean, and if you think about it, like these are some of the more subdued tasks, right? But like they're all things that your brain is wired for. And in the follicular phase, you start becoming more social. So like if networking feels like a chore during menstruation, which for most of us it does, even when you're a very extroverted person, during the follicular phase, it gets easier. At ovulation, that's your peak time for networking and for getting, I always tell people, schedule your headshot while you're ovulating because your face is the most symmetrical, because men don't want to attract a partner.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Right. People ask when we talk about this cyclical where it's not that everything's going to line up perfectly. Like I remember I was at South by Southwest and having like a ton of networking events on day like 25, 26, 27 of my cycle, but I knew that's when it was happening. And so I could buffer that on either end with a lot of rest. And I knew to tell my team, hey, I'm going to need like an hour of quiet time after I come back from, these sessions before I can go out. Right?
Yep.
That goes a long way. We're not saying like the work perfectly matches your cycle. It's being able to plan and honor your cycle through the work. And when you do have control, when you're networking or when you're writing or when I do this all the time, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm feeling really luteal. I know that like if I get into Coda or I'm, like my planning app, that I do better then because I'm doing this internal work more than this external work. I feel lucky that I can plan that. When I was a teacher, that was hard. When you're like, sometimes you don't have a choice in your work, but if you know what's going on internally, you can plan, for support outside of work during different phases to kind of bolster your energy throughout.
Yeah. And sometimes like in those, because I get that question a lot from people who are like, well, I work on somebody else's schedule. And I'll say things like, well, on your lunch break, can you take a 20-minute nap in your car? Or can you go out to your car and just have 20 minutes of quiet? Like little tiny things like that, being able to step away from your desk and maybe there's a water fountain close to you, but there's a water fountain across the floor. So you get up and you take the slow walk across the floor and you fill up your water bottle and you walk back. Like sometimes just those little tiny reprieves for your nervous system go a huge distance particularly when you're in certain phases of your cycle and your energy isn't as sharp and on point. So like the more you learn to plan your work and, maybe you stay a little later at work and you work a little extra on the days that, thus and so is happening because that you're in your late follicular and your ovulation phases, you have the energy for it. Whereas, during menstruation, you might bow out or see if a colleague can cover you or something like that if it needs to
or
be.
Or have a work from men day. I'm so more like it to have that's something I never thought I would say was okay to do. But sometimes I was thinking, as a menstrual health company, it's really okay to take a menstrual health day, right?
Yeah.
But then as I've been working, I'm like, sometimes, I do want to do the work, but I just don't want to, get up. I'm hurting. I'm cramping. I need my heating pad. I'm going to have a work from men day, and that's okay.
And I don't think
I can have one of those.
I feel the most productive during some of those days where I'm sitting there. If I don't have to put the extra energy into doing my hair and getting myself dressed, and I get to stay in my cozy, soft PJ pants and without anything pressing on my uterus, but I still have 3 calls and write 4 blogs. Like I still had a very productive day, but I didn't get out of bed the whole day.
Yeah.
And
it's this day and age, and what a benefit, right? Yeah. And I think, about the menstrual phase in specific, the bullshit falls away during the menstrual phase. You can only focus on so many things. And so it's kind of nice to say, I don't care what my hair looks like today. I care, I'm thinking a lot about how the onboarding flow is going to work for my company for this trial offer. And I want to get to the meat of that. And I can do that without bullshit right now. Yeah. That kind of mental clarity hits for me during my menstrual phase a lot of times.
Yes, me too. I have a hard time being verbal, but I feel like I have a lot of mental acuity during that time frame. And I don't feel like being social, but I can get a lot done. I find that I am able to do a lot of strategic planning during my late luteal phase and during my menstrual phase. So these are gifts that our brain is hardwired for during these periods of time. And also as a spiritual business, I find that I can tap into my intuition and does this feel aligned for me? Is this a direction I want to go in? Does this next decision, sitting with things and being okay, what feels like the next logical best step, right? And I can do that with a significant amount of clarity and with a lot more ease, I feel like, during menstruation. And there's a reason why we used to have red tents. And in some cultures, when you were in red tent, it was almost like a temple experience where your job was to commune with your ancestors for guidance, for support, for, these types of things, because that veil with your intuition is just so sharp during that period of time. So if you're looking at it even from a spiritual business, sense of the word. Like, there's a time and a place for everything. And if I'm on the fence about making any kinds of decisions, I will literally table it until I'm during my period, and I will sit with it and allow myself to really feel into, does this feel aligned? Is there anything that's making me pause? And then making a decision once I've come out of essentially my little hibernation nest, you know?
Yeah. And this like big picture to zoom out experience. The tiny stuff falls away. I have the same experience during my menstrual phase. It's pretty cool.
I love that.
I wish more people talked about it.
Yes, me too. But that's exactly why when you were like, oh, we could do a conversation about cyclical work, I was like, heck yes, we can, because this is a really important conversation to be having. And it's a really important one for people to begin to not only understand, but practice with. Like, it's not going to be perfect right away. When I started planning my workflow with my cycle, like I had times where like I didn't plan right, or because I had some sort of a stressor hit my body, like it threw off my cycle a little bit. And so, you know, but like I block my calendar on my normal podcasting day, and I don't podcast because usually I will podcast on a certain day of the week. And I will block my whole schedule so that nobody can book online, because I know I'm not going to be able to show up with the energy and the clarity and the kind of conversations that I want to have with people if I am not in essentially the right phase. So during my period, I just know that I'm not going to be at my best for this kind of work.
Yeah. I have also done a bit of like strategic like planning fundraising around my cycle too, which I think is really interesting. And any entrepreneur who's done fundraising knows it takes a lot of energy.
Yes.
And I think the strategy that worked best for me there is 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I'd have like, it's actually helpful for fundraising too. Like it'd be forced issue. And if you do a shorter strategic fundraise and you have, okay, I'm taking meetings these 2 weeks, and those 2 weeks are jam-packed. They're usually, you know, like end of menstrual, follicular, ovulatory time, those 2 weeks. And then you have about 2 weeks to kind of do the follow-ups and do the due diligence and whatnot. And if you, it was really helpful for me to both like have that mental model in my mind and say, oh, this actually works really well for fundraising. I'm going to time into my cycles if I have credibility. And, you know, it's something that's repeatable in the future as well. It's a cyclical strategy for fundraising. And it's really cool. It works.
Do you feel like you close more of those deals that you're looking to close when you're in like your ovulatory phase?
100%.
Yeah, because you're so magnetic. You just attract what it is that you're going for. Yeah. I find the same thing. Like when I have these big connection points for my work, I always find that it happens energetically during that ovulatory phase. There's just this level of on that you can't fake or recreate or anything like that, that just naturally magnetically oozes out of you. And then after that is a perfect time for follow-up because
you're like kind of in everything.
I love that. So if you were to leave, I feel like we could talk about this all day. It's such an important topic. So people, if you were listening to this, you need to listen to this more than once, because this is not something that you learn overnight. It is something that takes practice. It is something that, you know, using an app like Embody is going to be such a helpful tool for you, because it's going to visually give you landmarks, and then you're going to be able to see how your energy tracks with those landmarks. And as you get into it, I would say I started feeling a lot more confident. And this is even my area of expertise, man. But like I felt more confident about what I could take on after I had been doing this for like 3 months. Yeah. I really got a feel for when are my energy peaks, what is, you know, not working quite so well, what, you know, feels like I'm in the flow, and what kind of work comes out of me best during different time frames. And then I really felt like by that third month, I had a good handle on when I could plan certain types of tasks. Like I plan certain kinds of healthcare appointments around my cycle, for Pete's sake, because I know that my Wei Qi is down. This is, Chinese medicine talking, just before my bleed starts. And if I go to acupuncture, it's going to be a lot more pinchy than it is. I mean, it's going to be a lot more effective. She's not going to have to use as many needles because it's going to take less suggestion for the body to come into alignment. But I just know that appointment, I'm going to probably have to take a couple deep breaths because acupuncture is just going to feel a little more pinchy, right?
Yeah, so the same reason you don't need a wax right before your period. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, tattoos, waxing, anything like that. Like I have tattoos, man, and I could sit for 6, almost 7 hours for a tattoo when I did it around ovulation. If I did it before any time in that week before my period, no.
Different for sure. It really does. And I think also, like you're saying, 3 months for this like internal understanding to kind of hit home. I feel that too. And then another thing, I think women are designed to learn from each other in small groups. Like that's just kind of like, I believe that strongly. And so like checking in with your female friends about where they are in their cycle builds like this kind of expedited understanding of it all too. And I want to acknowledge my teammates, my co-founder, Danny, who's the technical guru, and other people who support with when we check in for Embody work, we always start with what day are you on, if you're comfortable sharing. And it builds this like external acknowledgement and understanding of how your cycle affects your teammates. And I think it's a really cool practice too.
That's awesome. Yeah, my virtual assistant and I do that as well. She's like, yep, I'm going into my period week. And I know that it doesn't matter how brilliant my ideas are. I'm going to need to like write them down and share them with her when she's through it. So it doesn't feel overwhelming for her. It helps me with expectations and, what is going to feel supportive or not supportive to her. Just simply because of where she is energetically in her cycle. And I think if, we are able to have more of these conversations, and I know that's hard to have in corporate experience, but it's one that you can have without being overt about it. I don't feel like it's going to fit this week, but could we schedule this presentation here? Right? Like you can have this conversation because I came out of a predominantly male dominated environment and I did fundraising early on in my career when I first got out of my master's degree. And it was hard when I had to network and I had to go on trips and they were forcing me out the door because I had a quota at a certain time of the month. Man, was that hard. But when I went out there on my timeline, because I felt good and I was gone for an entire week, like I would raise millions of dollars in that week. But but like on the weeks that I wasn't in that energetic space, like I had to crawl my way through. And if it was hard to engage with them, like it just didn't click. And often the gift didn't come through because I worked in nonprofit higher ed fundraising. It was like, I look back at that phase of my life and I went, man, if I had been more spun up on how my body was literally making my job work or not work, as the case may be, it would have completely changed how I felt about myself inside. Because when I didn't close the deal, I felt like a failure or like there was something wrong with me. Or when I had to go to a networking function and I didn't feel on, I internalized all that shit.
Totally. Oh my gosh. The amount of like, you blame yourself so much less when you know what's going on. And it's like, it really is helpful for that like sense of self and confidence to know, oh, okay, this might be because I'm ovulating, or this might be because I'm needing more rest. My body needs more rest now. It's not, I'm broken. I'm cyclical. Understanding that is really helpful.
It's such a huge frame shift, isn't it? I did an episode earlier on in, I believe it was season 2, around, maybe it was early season 3, but I remember it was in the winter time. So it was at the beginning of one of those 2 seasons. And we were talking about like moving through the world as a cyclical being. And that's what it is. It's the difference between feeling like I'm broken versus I'm cyclical. Like, just think about how the compassion for yourself changes. The understanding of yourself changes. I spent years thinking I was broken. I also, anyone who's interested in human design, I'm a projector. So like add that level of, sometimes being a hermit feels really good to me. On top of the fact that I'm a cyclical being, like when I'm in the introverted side of my cycle, I introvert hard. Like I could go live in a cave by myself away from literally every aspect of living life and I'd be fine. And my family has a very hard time understanding that because I'm surrounded by a lot of extroverts. But when I introvert hard, I'm like, take me to an abandoned island somewhere away from all human life, please.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. It's not that I don't like people. I actually really love people. And this is why I have this podcast. I love conversations like this with like-minded people. But man, when I'm in that energy, it is hard.
It really is. Yeah.
So if you were to leave our audience with a final thought around living and working as a cyclical being, what would that be?
I would say the greatest power and enjoyment in your life comes when you move with your cycle instead of against it.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. I just want to say that I am so honored that Embody has chosen to partner with Reproductive Rebel. So if you all haven't noticed, the recent episodes have been brought in partnership with Embody. So our two rebel hearts have linked up to be able to spread important information far and wide around cyclical living and reproductive health. So thank you and the whole team at Embody for making a commitment to Reproductive Rebel and for helping me to be able to continue making this show possible. And I'm so excited to be able to contribute to your beautiful brainchild as well.
Well, thank you, Adrienne. This is a dream collaboration, and I'm so thankful for the conversations you've had on this podcast. They're important.
Thank you. And until next time, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist, Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at MoonEssenceMe on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.